They never shouted, they never hit you. To everyone else, they were great parents. But somehow, you grew up anxious, guilty for having needs, and unable to trust your own feelings. That's not a coincidence, and it's not in your head. There's a specific kind of parent that does this, the narcissistic parent. By the end of this video, you'll be able to pinpoint exactly whether your parent embodies these traits and the effects that last long into adulthood. 1. The silent treatment. Let's start with the one that's probably the most common. A child says something the parent doesn't like. Maybe they talk back. Maybe they share a feeling that makes the parent uncomfortable, and instead of talking about it, or even arguing about it, the parent just shuts down, stops talking, leaves the room, carries on like the child isn't there. Now for an adult, that's hurtful. But for a child, it's scary, because a child depends on their parent emotionally. That's their safe person. And when that safety gets taken away with no warning and no explanation, the child doesn't think, my parent is being unfair. They think, I must have done something really bad. And so they learn to be careful. They learn to watch their parents' mood. They learn to keep quiet, stay small, and avoid doing anything that might make the silence come back. But here's the thing. The silent treatment isn't a form of discipline. It's a classic sign of control. And most of the time, the child doesn't even realize it's happening. It just becomes normal. 2. Guilt. Narcissistic parents rarely just ask for what they want. They don't say, I'd like you to stay home this weekend. Instead, they make you feel bad for anything that goes against their wishes. You know the kind of thing. After everything I've done for you, I suppose I'll just be here on my own then. No, go, have fun, don't worry about me. On the surface, these don't sound that bad. But when a child hears them over and over again, they start to learn something really specific, that their needs and their parents' happiness can't exist at the same time. Wanting to go out with friends? That hurts mom. Wanting some space? That means you're ungrateful. Wanting your own life? That's selfish. Researchers actually have a name for this. It's called emotional blackmail. It uses fear, obligation, and guilt to keep someone in line. And the reason it works so well in families is because it doesn't look or feel like control in the moment. It feels like love, like a parent who's sacrificed everything and just wants to feel appreciated. But what it actually teaches the child is that their independence comes at a cost. The cost of feeling immense guilt every time they try to put themselves first. 3. The compliment that isn't. This one is subtle, but if you grew up with it, you'll recognize it straight away. It sounds like praise, but it doesn't feel like it. You did great on your exam. I honestly didn't think you could do it. You look really nice today. Have you finally started making an effort? That was actually a clever thing to say. See what's happening there? Every compliment has a dig built into it. And the clever part is that if the child reacts to the dig, they get shut down. I was being nice. Why are you so sensitive? Over time, this does something really specific to a child. It teaches them that they'll never just be celebrated. There's always a but. There's always a catch. And what often happens later in life is that these people struggle to take a compliment from anyone. Someone says something kind to them and they tense up because they've been trained to wait for the part that stings. 4. The parent who's always the victim. This might be the hardest pattern to spot because this parent doesn't come across as controlling. They come across as someone who's suffering. They're always the one who's been let down, always the one who gave everything and got nothing back. Their child's completely normal desire for independence gets treated as a betrayal. Setting a boundary becomes a personal attack. A disagreement becomes proof that nobody cares about them. And because this parent genuinely believes their own version of events, it's really convincing, especially to a child. The child starts to wonder, maybe I am being selfish. Maybe I am asking for too much. Maybe this really is my fault. That slow loss of trust in your own feelings and your own reality, that's what psychologists call gaslighting. And when it comes from a parent, it hits differently. Because your parent is the first person who teaches you what's real and what's not. If they keep telling you that your feelings are wrong, that your memory of what happened isn't accurate, that you're the problem, you believe them because they're your parent. And parents are supposed to be the people you can trust most in the world. But sadly, that's not the case when a parent displays narcissistic traits. What this actually does long term. None of this leaves a mark you can see. There's nothing to point to, no raised voice to record, no bruise to show someone. And that's exactly why it's so hard to deal with later on. Because the adult who grew up with this kind of parent often can't name one single event that caused the damage. It wasn't one thing. It was thousands of small things. The guilt, the silence, the little digs, the constant feeling that something was off but not being able to explain what. It became so normal that they didn't even recognize it as harmful until they were well into adulthood. Maybe until they saw a video like this. And when they do start to recognize it, the guilt kicks in again. Because the parent didn't hit them, didn't scream. To the outside world, everything looked fine. But the child still grew up anxious, still struggles with boundaries, still feels guilty for having needs, still tenses up when someone gives them a compliment. That doesn't come from nowhere. If any of this felt familiar, whether from your own childhood or from things you're starting to notice in your own parenting, that recognition is important. This isn't about blame. A lot of narcissistic parents are repeating patterns they never stopped to question. They're doing what was done to them. But understanding what happened is how those patterns get broken. And if you grew up in a home where love felt conditional, where silence was a punishment, and where guilt was the price of doing anything for yourself, none of that was your fault. And the things you learned to survive, it don't have to be the things that define you going forward. If this gave you something to think about, share it with someone who might need to hear it too. And if you want to understand more about how families really work, check out our video on 5 parenting styles and the 2 most toxic. It's an eye-opener. Subscribe. We put out new content every week.